We're going to take a look at one of the most useful guitar tricks there is, the boogie pattern, which you can use to play the rhythm part to almost any blues song and almost any rock and roll song. We're going to learn it in the key of A because that's the easiest key to play it in if you haven't played it before. We don't need to start with a whole A chord. The great thing about playing the boogie pattern is we can play it with 2 fingers. First of all, hold down the 4th string at the 2nd fret. If you know your chords already, you'll know that that's part of an A chord. But because we're only going to play 2 strings, the 5th string and the 4th string, that's enough to make the whole chord. We don't need the rest of the A chord. Have that first finger just lie down a little bit so that it touches the 3rd string and kills it. So if you do accidentally hit the 3rd string, it won't ring. Now the trickiest part of this pattern is in the right hand. We want to try and bring the pick down across strings 5 and 4 without touching any other strings. Don't worry about what my left hand is doing at the moment, we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, to get that effect, I'm resting the right hand, the palm or the karate chop part of the right hand, on the bridge of the guitar. So I'm not swinging from the wrist or from the forearm, and simply I'm letting the wrist move from the point, the joint where it joins the arm. The forearm isn't moving at all. And I'm going to bring it down across strings 5. I'm going to rest the pick on string 5 and pull it through string 4 with a slightly away motion so that it's coming away from the strings after it's played the 4th string. It's very important that you hear both those strings. Now initially I'm going to play everything as downstrokes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, 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 down. Just get used to that feeling of bringing the wrist down in such a small little arc that it only gets strings 5 and 4. Okay, when you can do that, we're going to add something to the left hand. We're going to play 2 hits of what we just played, strings 5 and 4 with the 4th string fretted at the 2nd fret. Then we're going to bring the 3rd finger of your left hand, or you could use the 4th if you don't like that stretch, but I like the 3rd much better, to the 4th string 4th fret, and we're going to play that twice. Whoops, still hitting just the 5th and 4th strings. Now start to alternate those 2 pairs of notes. Okay, now you've got the first part of the boogie pattern. Now what we have to do is we have to put it into the format of a 12-bar blues, because most blues songs and most rock and roll songs, let's say most, certainly a huge number, are based around the 12-bar blues, which is a structure, a chord sequence if you like. Let's look at how to play the 12-bar blues. We're going to play the pattern we just played for 4 bars, and it will count like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2nd bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3rd bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and... And not surprisingly, a 12-bar blues has 12 bars in total. We've just played 4 of them. For bars 5 and 6, we move to a new shape. This first finger moves from the 4th string to the 3rd string, and we're going to play strings 4 and 3 together with the right hand. We'll play 2 bars of that. 5th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and 6th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and... For bars 7 and 8, we'll go back to our A chord. That bar we just came from, by the way, is a D chord, but we're only playing 1 note of it. Only holding down 1 note of it. Okay, back to the A chord for bars 7 and 8. 7th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and 8th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now along comes the 3rd chord in our set of chords. It's an E chord, but we only need the 5th string, 2nd fret. Again, lying it down so it kills the 4th string, we're going to play strings 6 and 5. And we're going to do that for just one bar, for bar 9. 9th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and the 10th bar will be our D chord again, finger on the 3rd string 2nd fret. 10th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and for the 11th bar we go back to A, 11th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and for our 12th bar we go back to E because the chord of E sets the music up to return to bar 1 and the A chord again. So 12th bar and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here's the whole 12 bar pattern again. I'll count the bar numbers as I go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And at that point we'd go round again. We'd go back to A and we'd start again from bar 1. One quick word in passing, if you are already familiar with the idea of turnarounds in the blues, then bars 11 and 12 of any 12-bar blues can be replaced by any turnaround that you know, that you like, that's in the same key. Okay, now we're going to look at a variation on the pattern that we just played. Previously, we just played 2 hits of the first chord shape, and then we put the 3rd finger down and played 2 more hits. The blues and rock and roll sounds a little bit subtler and more sophisticated if the ring finger only plays 1 and then goes back to the original shape. So I'm going to shout off or on depending on whether the 3rd finger is off or on. The 1st finger always stays on. So off or on will apply to the 3rd finger. So this is the slight variation on the pattern. Off, off, on, off, 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 on, off, 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 on, off, 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 on, off. You getting that? It's not better or worse, it might be a tiny bit subtler, but it's just a different way of playing the boogie pattern. Now what we want to do is we want to look at the 2 different rhythms that we use. Up to now we've played what musicians call a straight rhythm, which I always like to suggest is like the ticking of a clock. Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Every note that you play is exactly the same distance from the previous note. But the other style, the other rhythm that's very, very common in blues and rock and roll is the swing rhythm. And that goes like this. So here, the rhythm is more like a heartbeat. Bom, ba, 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 bom, ba. And my fingers are going off, off, on, off, 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 on, off, 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 on, off, 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 on, off. All with downstrokes in the right hand, just brushing across the 5th and 4th strings. I've also begun to do something that we do a lot with this style, which is to mute the strings by letting the palm of my right hand just come across the bridge just a little bit until you feel it touch the strings. And then the strings, instead of sounding open, just have a slightly deadened sound. That's very commonly used and always sounds good with the blues and rock and roll. Okay, so the last thing we're going to say is you've heard me talk a lot about this being used for the blues and rock and roll. What do I mean by that? Well, in case you hadn't already realized it in your travels around the musical world, the blues is simply a slow version of rock and roll, or if you prefer, rock and roll is simply a fast version of the blues. So, let's take our swung rhythm and we'll play a few bars of the boogie pattern as if it were a blues, like this. But if I speed that up significantly, I'm going to get rock and roll. You hearing that? Incidentally, When I speed up to that kind of speed, I would tend to start to play downs and ups instead of all downs, because it can become too fast to do everything as downs. There my right hand is picking down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. But both times it's trying to brush across the two strings, fifth and fourth strings. Alright, so that should do it for a little starter introduction to playing the boogie pattern for your blues and your rock and roll songs.